I don't know if it's because I grew up in the 90s, but there's something about that era's art style that never left me. And hey, I want you to tell me in the comments down below what era of gaming you love the most for the way it made you feel. See, back then, everyday life was designed. The Memphis Design look was everywhere. Pinks, teals, soft blues, pastel purples, and maybe it was the mini eggs I loved so much and their delicious flavor paired with that pleasing color scheme that made me appreciate this topic.
One of those, they're delicious!
The squiggly lines on paper cuts, the dentist walls, and all those liminal places we see more and more of on YouTube these days. It was cheerful in a way that tried to make the world look clean and modern, but still human and creative and expressive. You'd see it in the seats at Taco Bell, in the patterns on a pizza box, and even those crazy bowling alley carpets. And don't even get me started on the main title and menus of Toe Jam and Earl. The whole design language evolved and it seeped into our games, not directly, but through its palettes and shades. There was a short stretch where color was king from the late 90s through to the early 2000s. Gaming hit a point where developers had learned just enough about 3D to make things look good, but not enough to make them look real. And that middle ground, that uncanny, almost real, is where the beauty lived. And that's what I want to talk about today. The era of color. Enter the Xbox, PlayStation 2, and GameCube. Each had its own personality. It was the next natural evolution in console design following the PlayStation 1 and Nintendo 64. Saturn, Jaguar, 3DO, Dreamcast. We had so many options back then. We didn't know how good we had it.
We had it good, real good.
Following this, the Xbox was deep green, big and black, a real BBC, if you will, a big black
Wait, what?
console.
Brother, this guy stinks!
Serious and mechanical, the PlayStation 2 went sleek with its lines and efficient design, industrial with those cool blue, icy accents. And then, of course, there was the GameCube, purple. A game console that defiantly wore lavender plastic and when everyone else was kind of going black, silver, or chrome. Real Y2K. That alone said something about the optimism of the time. Everything had its own identity. I do give respect to PS5 for the alien mothership design of the console. While Xbox is just efficient in design. A black console with green tinted vents, purple, always felt calm to me. It sits between the warmth of red and the cool of blue, a balance that feels reflective and almost dreamlike. Even now, it's the color I drift toward when I pick clothes or decorate my space. It's even the color of my lighting. The games that defined that feeling. At 15, the world of games felt limited but unique. Tobal number 1 and 2, Mario 64, Sonic Adventure, Oddworld, Abe's Exodus, Echo the Dolphin, Turok Evolution, Rayman, Half-Life, Sin, System Shock, Wipeout, Three Dirty Dwarves, Wave Race Virtua Fighter, Sega's Blue Skies. I can't list them all. Every one of them felt drenched in atmosphere. They were completely and utterly saturated in mood. Skies were more than just a blue canvas with some pixelated clouds because they were upgraded into gradients of teal, fading into rose or pale orange, melting into violet. Clouds looked like, well, clouds. I always call them anime clouds, the fluffy bastards they are. The lighting had this handmade honesty that made every landscape feel like a diorama in this endless dusk or dawn. Day-night cycles improved or detracted from that feeling. You could pause on a cliff, look out over a beautiful ocean, and sometimes feel close to peace. And while the imperfections made it work, all of it added a kind of cool warmth you don't get from realism. Windows XP and the last of the warmth. That same softness showed up everywhere around the same time. Windows XP came out, that bright green hill. The blue sky, the glossy icons, it felt lush and alive. Even the start button looked friendly, soft, and comfortable. We didn't know it yet, but that was kind of the end of warmth in digital design. The 2010s came along and flattened everything. Simple, gray, minimalist. Skyrim's menus and boring fonts come to mind. That's when I realized things had changed. Oblivion had this parchment and quill type text. Skyrim was bland. But before that even the entertainment of our life had personality. Games, they matched that calmness that we found in the environments. Rounded menus, gradient skies, soft glows around text. It was creative and expressive, not sterile. When worlds felt alive. Even Halo, which everyone remembers for its realism in some respects, in architecture and landscape, was romantic in its colors even still. Those dusky purple sunsets, the faint orange haze over alien hills. It felt like you were walking through a lovingly crafted piece of art in a weird kind of way. The way the Halo structure rose above the misty horizon in the distance, coated in that soft visual design, the ocean separating you from it, the first level's feeling was calm and beautiful, if not dangerous. I was thankful to have that handy, overpowered pistol. The light in these worlds wasn't realistic by any means, but it was emotional. It wanted to make you feel something, and that's what I miss about gaming today. Not the graphics themselves, I love those too, but the tone. Look at Metroid Prime's Vendrana drifts. The snow glows blue instead of white with hue. The ice caves hum with color, and these points of interest are both technical flexes, but also their atmosphere. They feel like a place from your dreams or somewhere you can almost remember. CGI and the Uncanny Edge. Computer graphics have always carried a strange beauty, looking back at those old DOS games too. You know, from the research labs of the 70s through the experiments of the 80s into our theaters with films like Lawnmower Man, Tron, Pixar films, or YTV's Short Circuits at Home, which were a collection of old CG shorts that I still go back to and watch even to this day, because there's something magical about those colors and how early CG felt and looked. There's something haunting about how digital worlds looked, something we lost along the way. Too clean, too geometric, too flat, kind of eerie. I can remember watching these films and feeling that discomfort of how otherworldly they were, but I was obsessed with the visual perfection of them. To this day, I will pass an orchard on a drive or a new subdivision and look how perfectly spaced the trees are in the driveways, like something from these old 3D worlds, perfectly aligned, perfectly trimmed, bright green grass. Somehow reality today can mirror fantasy of yesterday. If you want a cool example, watch the Planet Caravan music video from Pantera. That's some of those repurposed into a video, but the music matches the video perfectly. I remember watching a British show called Cyberzone. Contestants would travel these flat shaded polygon arenas. The walls looked like flat polygons with a light source that didn't make sense because there were no shadows. And the movements were janky, almost marionette-like, but it worked. It felt like you were seeing into another dimension, and it made my imagination run wild, almost fearful. There's something unsettling about the flat, shaded polygons of yesterday, and I loved it. That same tension, that weird mix of fascination and discomfort, it stuck with me for life. Toy Story and Reboot, beautiful, but wrong. Not long after I moved to Canada back in 1994, Toy Story came out. Everyone was blown away by how real it looked. I think it was 95 Toy Story came out. Not real, but cartoon real. I remember staring at it thinking something along like, wow, this is beautiful and strange, and everything's so orderly, and the baby spider toy looked alive and empty. The plastic was too perfect, the legs with the hook. It was weird. Before that, there was Reboot. That was the first time I ever saw an entire world made of CG, bright, reflective, synthetic. The game that came down from the sky, the purple liquid glass, it looked like another dimension realized. And at the core of it, its colors. One of my ex's uncles actually worked at Mainframe Entertainment, the studio behind Reboot. He was a sound engineer and had a home full of memorabilia. Concept art, cells, megabyte posters. He even gave me a Reboot hat that I still have somewhere in storage. But Reboot really exemplified color and tone masterfully. The allure of discomfort. There's something oddly comforting about discomfort. Maybe it's from growing up on horror movies that subtle unease became familiar. Early CG had that same feeling. It wasn't exactly trying to be creepy, but it accidentally captured something spiritual. The beauty of things that aren't quite right. I used to walk through an old cemetery near my grandmother's house dating back to 1700s or further. Perfect rows of old worn down tombstones, trimmed trees shaped like cones, grass too even, peaceful, but again, eerie, like a scene from Alice in Wonderland. Artificial, yet tangible and real, and I loved it. Then came the era of Donkey Kong Country, Resident Evil, Final Fantasy VII, all the games I mentioned in the intro, and also came along pre-rendered backgrounds, which were their own kind of art, and art that I miss dearly now that it's not really a thing anymore. Graphical fidelity is strong. It can succeed what pre-rendered graphics have done. They were still images pretending to be living spaces that you couldn't interact with, but you explored. And that illusion created something special. Resident Evil 2 is a fine example of pre-rendered done right. You'd walk through these quiet worlds that felt sculpted by hand, light spilling across the floor, reflections frozen mid-moment. The shadows didn't match, they didn't move, the perspective was off, but you believed in it anyway, because whoever built it believed in it. That's why even people too young to have played those games may sometimes feel nostalgic looking at them. The palettes hit deep emotional notes, the turquoise glow of a lab light in Resident Evil, the steel blue shimmer of ocean waves in Sonic Adventure, the green and the tones of the cliffs. Those colors connect to a sense of memory, even if the memory isn't yours, and I think we all know it. That generation did Tropical Beaches the best. Color and emotion. Early digital artists had both emotional palettes with their technical ones. They leaned into colors that meant something, to me at least. And that final light before evening, perhaps inspiring my other love photography later in life. The peach tones of the sunset, that mix became the emotional fingerprint of the era. Even if you didn't live through it, you feel it when you see it. It's also the visual language of the era. Modern games are stunning, of course. They're beautiful and they're well rendered, but they often feel sterile and soulless in the worst ways. Too correct, too cautious, too afraid to experiment. Back then, everything was slightly wrong, and that's what made it feel interesting and exciting to explore. Why it still sticks with us. People say nostalgia is memory mixed with comfort, but I think it's also about imperfection. When you see a jagged skyline or a sunset made of an obvious gradient or exaggerated tones, your brain fills in the missing emotion. Like this morning, for instance, I drove to work and the sky was this purple-pink hue. It's rare a lot of the year, but when it happens, I almost think, wow, that reminds me of some 90s or early 2000s games, rather than, oh, that's a pretty sunrise. And it's collaborative in a way. The game gives you half and you supply the rest with your brain. Modern realism tells you everything. You aren't invited to fill in the blanks or lack of detail with memory. In fact, it'll slap a big old streaker yellow paint for you to know exactly where to go. Old 3D invited you to explore and imagine. And that's why the early 2000s visual design still resonates. Sure, the polygons were nice to see, but it was the emotion built into the colors, the quiet belief that technology could be emotional, that virtual worlds could still have soul. And this is what I'm yearning for. Then something changed. The era that came next, the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 generation, brought what felt like a color extinction. Those fantasy worlds were gone for a while. Everything turned brown and gray. The tone shifted to realistic, which too often meant lifeless. Dusty war zones, rusted cities, dim corridors. I don't mind edgy. I like grit when it has personality, but most of it was just dull. Games stopped using color to communicate emotion and instead used it to hide behind maturity. There were exceptions to the of course. The Mass Effect Citadel, for example, was a rare flash of light. Cool blues, that soft ambient glow that made it feel like that Neofuturism from earlier years. It reminded me of what we'd lost, but overall, the decade that followed never found its identity through color.